Hi and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Suzanne and you are most welcome. And today I'm going to teach you how to make your own raspberry infused vinegar. This is my last bottle that I made last year. I'm at the end of May. You're probably seeing this in June, but this is my first pick of fresh raspberries. And I'm about to get a glut even though our weather is absolutely atrocious here. Now my blackbirds are already feasting on these and they've got fledglings and I don't begrudge them at all. But even though I'm sharing these with the birds, I'm going to get absolutely tons because my raspberries fruit both in the spring and the autumn. And so regardless of us eating them fresh, I can make jellies, jams, infused alcohol, and I can give them away. But I also freeze them. And so I pick them day and night, put them in the fridge until I have enough, put them in these containers, put them in the freezer. And this is my glut from last year. This is my small jam pan. And so now I need to clear out my freezer ready for this year's glut. And so today, this is when I make my infused raspberry vinegar for the rest of this year. And it's really, really simple. And I can tell you now, once you've made your own infused vinegars, you are never going to want the store-bought stuff ever again. And it's as simple as you can either make it fresh or use these frozen raspberries, but what you're going to see is you're going to need to do this quickly because they're going to start pulling in condensation, and what you really don't want is you don't want these ice crystals. Now I'm getting this because I'm trying to film this to do this for you, and so when I've done this I'm going to have to simmer this down to reduce it to get this water out. So my advice to you is if you're going to use frozen fruit, get it in the pan and get it covered with the vinegar as quickly as possible so that you don't have this water collection. So as you can see, these are my frozen raspberries and all I'm going to do is tip them in there, but you can see because they've been sat, they're starting to gain those ice crystals. So in this pan I've got just over 2 kilos of raspberries, and you can choose whatever vinegar you want for this. Now some people will recommend that you heat up your vinegars, and if you're using fresh fruit or a really robust fruit, I would recommend that too. But because these are frozen and they're starting to form these ice crystals, I'm not going to do that because obviously that would take time for me to get this vinegar up to temperature. Today I'm using cider vinegar. You can use white wine vinegar. If you wanted something really deep, this one from last year is really dark because I actually used red wine vinegar. But this time I'm using this cider vinegar. You can, if you wanted to, if all you'd got was white vinegar, just normal distilled vinegar, you can go ahead and you can use that. It may be a bit more harsh, so you can do this, and once it's steeped you do not have to add any sugar to this at all if you don't want to, most especially if you're growing your own fruit and it's really sweet. However, this is going to sit for a few days. Once we've added our vinegar, we're going to let it steep. After that, we're actually going to have to strain this to get all the pulp out. Now, fair warning, the vinegar acts as a preservative, but if you don't strain this, it will ferment. So you do need to strain it and make sure you've strained it very well. And if you've added sugar, that's what these fruits will ferment on. And all they're going to do is they're going to produce alcohol, which if you left it over time will just turn into vinegar. So it's not like it's a huge deal. I have a bottle of elderberry vinegar. I've been in this house for 10 years and the first year I was here I made elderberry infused vinegar, and that bottle has been sat in this house aging for 10 years. So this will last a very long time, but do strain the pulp out of it. If you're going to add sugar, Add the sugar to your own taste, because again it will depend on the sweetness of your fruit and your own palate. Now as you can see, because I've added the vinegar is already getting rid of those ice crystals, whereas if I waited and heated this vinegar up, it'd be pulling more ice crystals in, and I don't want that, because you know, these fruits are delicate, and so the longer you have to simmer them, the longer you're destroying the good benefits, and we all want the good benefits out of this. Now as for bottling this up, obviously you can reuse these bottles. These are fantastic, because all you've got to do is use a fork, pick that out, and you can bottle it, you know, wash these out, bottle it straight back up into these. Why waste them? But I have these bottles with the flip tops, so that's what I use, and sometimes I give these away as well as gifts, so it's nice to do that. Now because I've got a bit more fruit in here than the 2 kilo, I'm actually going to get my son to pick up a bit more vinegar for me. But also these are sat a little bit proud at the moment because they're frozen, but as they thaw out, the fruit will actually go down under the vinegar. So let me just put you into this, so you can see that the vinegar is now nearly up to the top of this, and as this thaws down it'll sink. I wish you could smell this. I mean, I know there's the smell of the vinegar, but these raspberries, even though they have been frozen, they smell absolutely gorgeous. If you don't have a lid for you, because you know, if you're doing a smaller batch than me, you could do it in a jar. Let me put this back out. Right, so you can use a little jar like this, or you can put it in a bowl, but you must cover it because it's vinegar, and so it attracts fruit flies. You don't want anything to get into this, you want to keep the dust out of it. And so we're going to come back to this in a few days, so I'll see you then. So here we are 2 days later, and I've got my 2 litres of vinegar and my 2 kilos of raspberries, and they're ready for straining. And so now I've got another pan, and I've got my jelly strainer ready to put everything through. And so let's get that done. Use a ladle. Bring everything over. And I'll come back to you when I've got that all sorted, because otherwise I'm going to make a huge mess of all of this. And so as you can see here, I've now got all my juice strained. It's in a pan, and I'm bringing it up to a simmer. You can also see here these bubbles forming will also form the same sort of scum that you get on top of a jam, and we're going to actually skim that off the top before we add any sugar in. I have a fermented garlic recipe, and if you haven't seen that, I'm going to link it in the description, because I'm going to use those ingredients in a recipe that I'm going to post. And so in that particular recipe, I got lots of comments showing me how people had done it all different ways. And again, these things are great because it depends what your needs are, depends how long you're going to keep it, and it depends what part of the world you learn these things in. And so this is how I do it. So like I say, you might not want to add any sugar, and you may have also used fresh fruit, but as you saw for this particular part, I actually used frozen fruit. I have actually done some more. As you'll see in the thumbnail, that's my fresh fruit, because my fresh fruit is coming in thick and fast. So here, look, you can see this is just any impurities that are coming off. And so we're going to turn that right down and let it simmer. And the other reason I'm letting it simmer is because, again, this was frozen fruit, and so I want it to reduce down any water that that fruit collected whilst it was defrosting. If you remember, I showed you the crystals, because frozen things do that. Frozen tomatoes do it as well. So I'm going to let that go now for about 10 minutes before I add my sugar in. Now I tasted this, at room temperature before I started bringing it to boil. And the reason for that is because when it comes to sugar, fruit has different sugar levels in it depending on what time of year it's produced, when it's picked, and also depending on what weather we've had. And so for me on this, I'm actually adding more sugar than I would do normally. In this bowl, I've got about 500 grams of sugar. That's for the 2 litres of vinegar and 2 kilos of fruit I had. Normally with raspberries, I wouldn't add that amount of sugar. In fact, sometimes I wouldn't add any sugar at all. But this was seriously tart. So that's what I'm going to do with this. Be back with you in a minute. So now that this is clear as we can get it, and it's been reduced down, you can see that I started up here. That's where my line was originally. I'm now going to add in my sugar. Now, whilst you've been doing all of this, you want to have prepared your bottles. And again, there's conflicting advice as to whether you need to sterilise your bottles or not. For me personally, because I'm working with hot liquid, I know that I've got to have hot bottles for this to go in so that my glass doesn't break. So I'm kind of the opinion that if I've got to have hot bottles anyway, I may as well sterilise them. So again, your kitchen, your rules. But you know, most people have dishwashers. So I think if you've got a dishwasher, you may as well run them through the dishwasher. They're going to come out hot anyway. So then you've sterilised them. And if not, just sit them in hot water to heat them up, you know. But if you put boiling water over them, again, you're going to be sterilising them, and they're ready and they're hot, ready to come out for your hot liquid. If you're working with cold liquids, then again, your jars have to be cold for that cold liquid to go into. But there's nothing to say that, you know, if you've got the ability to sterilise your jars, then I would do that, especially if you've not heated your products, because whilst you're working with the vinegar, you've diluted that vinegar down with quite a lot of juice. So for me, I think, you know, why not? So I have a funnel, because if not, this is going to go everywhere. I mean, who am I kidding? It's likely to go everywhere anyway. So this is the bottle that I'm using with the kilner top. Because of the vinegar and the sugar that I've put into this, this will be shelf stable. But if you want to put this into the fridge, go ahead and do so. So keep stirring this once you've put your sugar in so that the sugar doesn't sink to the bottom and burn. And once that sugar's dissolved, you're done. And so all that's left to do now is to bottle this up. One bottle, funnel, ladle. And if you've not done this before, be careful when it gets close to the top, because if you're anything like me, no matter how many times you've done this, you will forget and have it pouring out the top of the bottle, because I've done that more times than I care to admit. But seriously, look at the fabulous colour that this is. And it smells gorgeous, but I will say, whilst you've got this on the heat, make sure you have a door or a window open, because the fumes from this vinegar are brutal. Especially if you've me, I've got hypersensitivity issues, so it really does get me. So now I'm just adding little bits at a time to give it time to get through the funnel so that I don't actually end up with it all over my kitchen. It will actually sink down. So these bottles are a sealed top. They're quite awkward for me actually, but I usually get my son to do this because they're stiff for me. There we go. So you have to kind of hold that in place. But as this liquid cools, it'll also seal that in tight as well and cause a vacuum and pull it down. So there you go. Raspberry infused vinegar, and I've got a recipe to show you in that, and I'll link that at the end of this video. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you'll like it, subscribe and share, but I hope you'll give it a try, and if you do, Link it down in the comments. I've also got an elderberry vinegar and I'll leave that down in the description. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.